Sure. Go ahead.
The cash register would have been rendered obsolete.
We do it upfront, so like better.
Smith House Fried Chicken, Dahlonega, Georgia, with Miss Janine. Dahlonega, Georgia, December 31st, 2025. New Year's Eve. Just out to have some fun. Say hey, Janine.
Hi.
Hello.
Happy New Year's Eve. Feel free to use the
Alright, so as you guys head down, we are approaching our first stop, which is what we call the Night Vein. It's actually one of our last discoveries that we had here in the mine. So as we head underground today, we are working our way backwards, coming from one of our original exits and going towards that entrance. This was found about in year 6 of our operation. So we came from the opposite direction, and what we did is actually blew everything up in here. What we saw sticking out of the ground was a very large quartz deposit where all this sunlight is seeping in, and there was a geologist named Mr. Knight who stumbled upon this and knew that in this region of Georgia, quartz and gold settle at the same rate. So he saw that from the surface and really wanted access to that piece of rock. Decided to try to dig it out, but that didn't work out in his favor, as it is kind of difficult to put a shovel through solid granite. So blowing things up with dynamite was the next best option. Again, very slow, very unsafe, but worked out in his favor as he blew about 90 feet forward each time. As we go throughout the mine today, we are only going 200 feet deep, but in total is about 800 feet of tunnel system. So there was a lot going on. And once they got to this spot, they realized the piece of quartz they saw sticking out of the ground was much larger than they anticipated, and it filled up the entire empty space right behind me. So as far down as you can see, and left to right, was that quartz deposit, and they used the sticks of dynamite to blow chunks of that out, put it into our mine carts, and then send it out the side of the mountain to a stamp mill, which we have on our property. At that point, they crushed all the rock down to a fine powder. They had to use mercury, cyanide, and arsenic to very safely extract all of the gold out. Remember I said it wasn't golden nuggets, it was something called flour gold, very minuscule pieces like baking flour. Not something you could just pick out with your eyes and hands, so a chemical process was necessary, and from that we ended up getting around 55 pounds of that flour gold. Pretty insane. If we had found it today, it would have been roughly $3.7 million worth of gold, which is a big deal. Again, only part of that 20% that we were able to get out of the ground, but it did leave over this nice ravine. Again, we ended up shutting down due to that bankruptcy shortly after, and this ended up flooding all the way to the top, but it left over this, and we get to look at it today. Probably one of the prettier spots on the tour, so you guys feel free to take pictures, especially of this spot. But for now, does anybody have any questions about the Night Vein? Okay, see no hands. We're gonna head down this staircase. It is kind of slippery, so hold on to the railings. Also, this is a lower hanging rock right here, so go ahead and watch y'all's heads, but you can go ahead and follow me down this way, all right?
So cool.
I'm glad you like it.
Is this open? It is. It is open. Wow. It's amazing. So this is all a big piece of quartz. Wow.
colored patches right here. We'll go ahead and start with this white rock right in the middle. That is actually what we were looking for as we went throughout the mine. Like I said, they were looking for quartz because gold likes to settle at the exact same rate. Essentially what our miners are doing is something called vein chasing. So they started at the front of the mine and they would drill about a foot or two deep, little holes about this wide. They'd quite literally just look inside and see if there was any quartz. If they saw something, they would keep going forward. If they did not, they would move to a different spot. But for some reason or another, they left this one right here. We are able to see exactly what's going on down here in the mine. So if you look on the outside edges, right where it meets all that granite, you can see there's a bunch of this shiny stuff in the wall. That's all that flour gold that's mixed into the granite, again, having to use the chemical process to separate it. Another really good indicator gold is definitely in this spot. It's this orange patch directly to the right, and that is a bunch of rust from iron. That has oxidized since we drained the entirety of the mine when we reopened. If you look directly in between the white and orange patch, there's these little golden flakes embedded in the wall, about 10 times the average size of flour gold. You can see it much better if I take the light away, and that is because gold is very lustrous in and of itself. As long as you're looking in the right area, you were able to identify it. And the reason that we had to use the mercury, cyanide, and arsenic to help separate everything is because we also have a lot of fool's gold down here. If you guys look up on the ceiling on this part, this is all a mixture of mica and iron pyrite. Those are minerals very similar property-wise to actual gold. They're just not as dense or lustrous, therefore not as admirable. So what we want to give people when we're selling all of that stuff. So again, we use chemicals to separate it all and kind of get what we needed to get out of the mine. Last thing I want to talk about is this big black patch on the wall. That is the reason that the mine flooded for our 70-year period that I talked about, and it is a naturally occurring process. A lot of people might think that we flooded it on purpose to prevent anybody from coming down here and getting stuff, but right now we are completely surrounded by water tables, so that is little pouches of water to the right, left, above, and below. That water is slowly seeping in through the soil and cracks in the rocks. Also, we have a gaping hole that contributes to our water intake, so we do have to pump all of that out. We were open originally in that 8-year period. It was a manual pumping system, so we had to stop that once we lost all of our manual labor. Since then, we have implemented electrical pumping systems that run constantly and regulate the top 200 feet of our mine, like I mentioned. But for now, does anybody have any questions about this spot specifically?
Wow, that's crazy. Ruining my dress shoes. Wow.
You guys like keep coming in this way just to fit everybody. Alright, so our next up is our waterfall room. You guys turn and look on this back wall. That is actually the largest waterfall in the city limits of Dahlonega, which is pretty insane. It's very beautiful, but it is part of our electrical pumping system. Like I said, it runs constantly. It's the only thing that runs when the power goes out. In fact, our generators power it, but there's a well underneath our property. All the water somehow gets up to that little hole at the top, down this wall, and into our little man-made creek, and circles all throughout the mine. I don't know how it works besides that, and I don't really care because I'm not a plumber, but I am appreciative that it runs because we are able to run force with it going. But if you guys turn around and look at this back wall, this is actually our most common and simple form of making those holes throughout the mine. Like I said, they aren't very wide, only about this big, but they do go 6 feet deep, which is pretty deep. What our miners would do is use our hammer and hand steel process, basically acting as a chisel. They would set this hand steel on the wall just like that, take their hammer to swing it, hit it, and then twist it. Repeat this process over and over and over again until they had these holes 6 feet deep. Now, this is a 12-hour day, 7 days a week. These guys got paid 90 cents to be down here doing this, okay? Not a lot of money. National average is about 35 cents a day, so arguably a better position, but it does really do a lot to your shoulder. It did also take a long time to make one hole by itself. Like I said, this process is very, very slow. That's because it took an hour to go 8 foot deep, and if you tried to speed that up at all, rubbing metal and rock together too fast for too long would actually create friction and they would melt into each other. So you guys look up here, the hand's got been stuck for about luckily it did not, because back then we had up to 600 men at maximum occupancy. That is a lot of guys to take out with one clean glove, so our miners had to be very, very careful, and they were only given one of these hand seals at the beginning of their shift. They also cost 90 cents, so if you did not turn it back in at the end of the day, you did not get paid. There was an incentive to come down here and do your job correctly. But they would come in, make holes 60 deep, and then fill them with about 6 or 7 sticks of dynamite and blow them 90 feet forward at a time. Again, a very slow and unsafe process. These guys would have to get away from the blow sites as fast as they could, but we'll talk more about that as we go throughout. But for now, do you guys have any questions about this box specifically?
Why did you have to do that?
So because you can't just put dynamite in front of something and blow up how you want it to. You had to put it in a special spot in order to blow it up in a safe way. Does that make sense? All right, any other questions? You got one?
Are they doing this to try to find the holes?
They make the little holes so they can blow it all out, and they take the rocks to that thing I call the sand mill, and they crush it all down and take the gold out. So, after this, we did invent 2 bigger, better tools, which we'll see as we go throughout. Did you have a question?
Why is that one stuck there?
That one stuck there because he went too fast and it ended up melting into the wall. We tried to pull it out with different machines, and I can swing from it if I want to. It's just very cold, so I don't want to touch it. But there's also a lot of what we call potential energy on top of it. All that gravity has been pushing down for all of those years. So if we pull it out, it's all going to come down with it. We'll have a cave in. So everything that's stuck in the walls stays in the walls because we don't want Walmart to come down on top of us. So. Any other questions? You guys can go ahead and follow me to our next stop.
That's where we just came from. What tracks? Dog? Like animals? Are those dog tracks? Oh, I thought you were. Okay.
They don't have wings back then. All right, so our next stop is our stope drill and our stope tunnel. This is not something you would commonly find on the East Coast just because of our rock type and structure. It's not necessarily safe to have over here, which we'll talk about. But like I said, we're going backwards. Our miners came from the opposite direction and they stumbled upon this. This is a very large empty hole, which means something was filling it before. It was another quartz deposit, and they either believed it was the night vein or it was big enough to take out anyways and make money off of. But what our miners would do is bring wooden ladders down here and then build levels of scaffolding, working their way up over time. They would chip away those rocks. You guys can see all of the holes in the sides of the walls, and the quartz would fall down right here. We're currently standing on the minecart track, so all of the minecarts would run all day, and we fit all 600 men inside that space with those carts. This is a pretty good idea, honestly, knocking all the quartz out, but it was really, really slow with those hammer and hand steels, so they did decide to utilize a stope drill. This is essentially a reverse jackhammer, and our miners would carry this down here and attach a hose of pressurized air from the outside, and it would drill into the rock about 5 times faster than our hammer and hand steel process. But there is 3 really big downsides to this, even though it's a huge advance for the mining industry. Carrying it up and down those ladders for 12 hours a day is not exactly ideal. It's between about 150 to 200 pounds, and so were our employees. They were teenage boys, so that is not super fun for them, not hard to do or impossible, but again, not convenient.
Because you can lift your own weight.
Exactly. The second thing is all the rocks that were up there eventually had to fall down here. Like I said, all 600 employees are down here completely unprotected because hard hats had not been invented until 1919. We shut down in 1906, and a lot of people say, Madison, why didn't they just invent hard hats? Again, teenage boys working down here. They're not thinking about that, okay? It's not something that crossed their minds. But the third most unavoidable thing was something called silicosis. It was actually a disease that our miners ended up getting from the rock. I said this was unsafe. It's not typically found on the East Coast because we have a lot of granite down here. And inside of granite, something called silica resides, okay? When you release silica with specifically pressurized air, it does blow right back into your face, and it is just a very refined version of fiberglass. So that is a lot of internal bleeding within your upper respiratory system. system, basically shredding up their lungs over a span of 10 years. All these guys came to the same hospital at the same time with the same disease, and eventually we traced it back to the stope drill. We did stop all operation. Granted, that was after we had already shut down due to bankruptcy, and we had already made the replacement without even knowing it, but we'll talk more about that later on in the tour. For now, do you guys have any questions about the stope drill or the tunnel itself? Yes?
I know blue tube.
That blue tube. Everybody asks about that blue tube. That actually connects to Walmart on top of us. Did you know that?
What's a Walmart?
It's a store. Yeah, it's a superstore. It connects to their garden section. So in the spring it gets seeds and a bunch of flowers grow right here in the spring. Oh, story.
What happened? Get back to Aaron.
Yes, that's it. All right, so we're going to head to our next stop. As you guys further into the mine, do take note there's this hole on the right side of the wall, and that is what we call our safety tunnel. It's just far enough away from a blow site that our miners wouldn't get too injured. Also, the ceiling is about to drop to around that 5'9", 5'10" mark, so I do apologize to your taller folks. Go ahead and watch your heads and follow me this way.
No, it's not.
I'm the perfect guy. I never choose, but down to you, What?
Oh, okay. All right. Looks like another drill.
All right. So if you guys look right here, this is what I call our old tool stop. Like I mentioned, our mine was underwater for that 70-year period, and all of this has been completely preserved and pulled from lower levels, all being used way back when. These things on the far left look like just like poles of metal, but those are actually attachments to our stope drills and something called a drifter drill. Even though we're using pressurized tools, we are still working about 6 feet deep into the wall, so you need that length even with the pressure behind it. We have some miscellaneous minecart parts. We have an axle, a wheel, some random parts that we literally ripped off and just threw in the corner. The reason that these are all here is actually because of this thing that's stuck in the wall, which looks just like a stope drill, and it actually is pneumatic as well, so running on air. And it got stuck when we decided to reopen. So we came back down, and remember, only 20% of the gold had been taken out, and we wanted that remaining 80%. We tried to take it with all of these tools. This has since been refined and perfected as opposed to the stope drill, but same thing as our hammer and hand seal, was just used incorrectly and it got stuck in the wall. Again, potential energy right on top of it. As soon as that is removed, this will all fall in because of all that gravity. Even over the past 50 years, there'd be an insane cave-in in this spot specifically, so we leave it there and post a bunch of old tools around it to kind of deceive everybody. But the thing right next to it is a stope drill stand. Like I said, it can get up to around 200 pounds, and this is a solid piece of metal, again, optional to carry up and down the ladders, and set your stope drill down just to relieve yourself of a little bit of weight. Last thing I want to talk about is this big drifter drill on the ground, and this is the successor of our stope drill, solving all 3 issues. Special thing about this is there's only about 20 of them left in the world from this time period, and we have 2 of them inside of this mine, 5 in the United States. So we're going to talk about this at our very last stop, as that is the last stop, but just know that it solved all the problems that our stope drill posed. And the fact that we have all these is really insane because not only were they underwater, but it was the period of time they were underwater. World War I and II had both occurred, and the military was coming into our mines to take all the metal out and melt it down to repurpose it and put it towards the war cause. All this has survived for some reason or another, which we'll talk about in just a second. But for now, do you guys have any questions about any of these tools?
So the stope drill is first, then the pneumatic, and then this other drill? Okay.
The stope and the drifter and then
Okay.
Why do you think that would be a good idea to drill that right now? Because you can't really pull it out with that thing.
you can't pull it out with that thing, so that's why we leave it there. We made holes with this. We didn't drill anything out. So it didn't touch other tools. Yeah. All right, we're going to head into this little room. There are benches, so please feel free to sit down. want me to get a picture of you?
No, that's fine.
That we didn't complete. Like I said, we did that vein chasing thing, so walking throughout the mine, looking about 5 or 6 times a day instead of up and down every time we go on the ladder. Also drill side to side instead of up and down. So now our rocks are falling out towards us instead of on top of us, and that is a lot easier to avoid, believe it or not. The third, the most important difference is the last drill we looked at ran on air. This one runs on water. So as soon as it hits the granite, it's immediately absorbing all of the silica. Silicosis is no longer an issue. But like I said, that wasn't discovered till after we had shut down. This drill was actually invented due to a visibility issue. So there's a lot of dust and debris flying around down here, and the miners thought maybe the water will absorb all that dirt. Solved the right problem for the wrong reasons, and we have kept this model around even today. Like I said, still running on that water, again, with a big tank on the outside, running that in. It would drill about 10 times faster than our hammer and hand tool process. So all around, it's just a better tool on top of everything we've seen. Only downside is this is a very loud piece of equipment. You can imagine this is a very loud environment anyways, with explosions, mine carts running, 600 men talking to each other, metal hitting the walls over and over and over again. This drill specifically, our miners would lose their hearing in about 3 months, which is very quickly. It was complete hearing loss. They compensated for that around $2.75 a day, but they would come in here, lose their hearing, and go home. The only reason for that is because back then we were relying heavily on the humeral theory, and they thought hearing was only on the outer part of your ear and no knowledge of the eardrum. So they would rupture pretty frequently. Eventually, that deafness would occur. Since we have discovered that eardrums exist, science has come a long way since 1906. We have been able to fix that, and that's why they still have kept this around. Again, a great model. Very much if it's not broke, don't fix it. But this one specifically, again, is one of 20 left in the world in the time period. We have 2 of them here inside of this mine. This one is one of the only operating ones left in the world, okay? It still turns on. Currently, we have attached to pressurized air running at about 25% power, so it is operating just like our stope drill would. It's not drilling into that rock, so silicosis is not going to occur. The 25% power is a pretty big deal because back then it would lose the hearing so quickly being at maximum power. They also had 10 of them inside of this mine, so hearing about 750% more noise than we're about to hear right now. I'm going to turn it on for about 3 seconds, and I want you guys to go ahead and cover your ears if you think you have sensitive hearing, and then listen to the echo once I turn it off, all right? Is everybody ready? 3, 2, 1. I think it's cool. You guys don't think it's cool. Alright, so, huh?
I'm impressed it still works.
I know.
That was a Droocher drill. Yeah. Pretty neat. But again, they heard about 750% more noise. It is really cool that we still have this operating, being over 120 years old and being underwater for that 70 years. Only thing we've had to replace on it is that one little nut and bolt system. Otherwise, it is completely authentic and it wasn't hard to do for World War I and II, which is pretty sick. Do you guys have any questions about the Drifter drill and how it operates? Yeah?
Why did they use it?
Why did they use it? Because it was better than the other tools. It helps get the gold out faster. Any other questions?
That's the last operational one in the world.
I think there's 2.
Oh, there's
It's the
2.
only one in the States.
Okay, all right. Okay, wow.
I have no clue. They didn't tell me.
Wow.
They would tell me so much. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and let you guys know. Past that X is the original entrance of the mine. If you go about 100 yards that way, it literally just spits out to the side of the mountain. A lot of people wonder why we don't go to the entrance, and it's simply because on the outside there's a lot more limestone than there is granite. That's a much softer sediment. We have tree roots and systems growing there that are just a liability for you guys. It's a trip hazard, so not OSHA approved. But it is really neat, not super far, only about a football field, and we are learning more about the mine every day. So, yeah, buddy.
How old is the drill?
How old is this drill? I stopped using it in 1906. So, a long time ago. About 120 years old. It's almost 22 years. Oh, happy New Year's Eve.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Last year. All right, well, we'll go ahead and start heading back up to the gold panning and gemstone mining. If you have any questions or any concerns, go ahead and call Rafi.
Pull it up. Then throw your right down. Once it's full of water, you want to take your gold pan and shake it from left to right, right tilt that gold pen a little bit away from you and work that sand up to that red line, but not past it. You do not want to lose any sand while you're above the water. Now after about 5 or 6 shakes, shaking to that red line, you want to stop shaking. And with both hands, gently take that gold pen and push it straight down in the water and straight back up. And you'll see a little bit of sand leave the gold pen. It is going to take a little while here. Now you just want to shake, shake, shake. Gently wash away that sand. Bring it back up. Shake, shake, shake. Remember, right up to that red line, but not past it. And wash away that sand. And after about 15 minutes, you should be down to about a good handful of material left in your pen. Now this is what we like to call a good hand. Now once you work it down this far, you need to take your gold pen up to one of us miners, and we'll help you get the gold out for you. Put it in a little tube so you can take it home for a soup. After you're done with your gold pen in the day, you might want to try out some gemstone mining. We have a wide variety of nuggets for you to choose from.
All right, you guys go ahead and come in this way.
All right, gold miners,